I met up with James Taylor, who a lot of the young ones might not know, but
Right.
James, what a career. He's still touring. You know,
Yeah, of
James is
course.
a bit older than me. He's probably 76, I'm 74 now. And we sat in a hotel room a few months ago in Sydney in Australia. For 3 hours we chatted. He basically said, if I hadn't met you, he said, I'd probably be dead now.
Wow.
Because he had a drug addiction. I'm not giving away secrets because
No.
I'd never do that. He said the exercise became his addiction. He hasn't touched anything in 30 plus years. He said, I'd probably still be married to Carly Simon, which is a funny thing to say. But I thought, well, how good is it? And I don't look at that as about me. I look at that as that martial arts actually had an influence on his life, meaning just because I did martial arts, that had the effect on someone like James. I thought, how cool is that,
All right, Stories with Sensei, Mr. Richard Norton. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's just an outstanding to have you here. Been a very lucky morning. Been a very beautiful morning.
Isn't it though? Look at this.
And your career is a wonderful mix, and they seem to have worked together of martial arts and Hollywood and the world of Hollywood, on screen and off screen. When it all started for you, was martial arts for sure first, and that was where you were, and then it kind of went into Hollywood? Or would you say they were always working together?
No, 100% martial arts came first. And the reason being that I started judo when I was 11 years of age, got into karate, I think when I was 15, 16, and that became my life's thrust. And I don't mean that lightly, because you kind of go, well, how do you know that back then? But I just have vivid recollections when I've said this a lot of interviews, but I'll say it again, when I first saw a demonstration by Tino Seberano Hanchi. He's a Hawaiian Filipino that had been out in Australia for 6 months. We were told there was a demonstration near to where I was living. Went along, had a look at that. It was a very fundamental demo, basic karate moves. I remember thinking, oh my God, this is what I want to do with my life. Now, it wouldn't have been that profound, but you know what I mean? Oh man, I was just so drawn to the idea of this. So off I went. And without going into a long-winded thing, I feel that became my through line for my life, meaning that starting so young, I got to make martial arts my main focus and have everything else fit in around that, as opposed to being, say, in my late teens or an early adult, where you've established a workplace, you've got your career and your job, and then you fit something like martial arts in. For me, it was a matter of fitting everything else into my passion for the martial arts. And I've often said, and I mean it, that everything good in my life has come as a result of that passion, for the martial arts. And movies came again as a result of martial arts. I had no aspirations of getting into movies. It came just quickly from Chuck Norris, Bob Jones, my partner, coming out to Australia, 78. I went to the States in 79 working as a personal bodyguard, as you probably know, for Linda Ronstadt, James Taylor, and of course I called Chuck. We started training. He's ready for the Octagon movie. Knew I could handle Okinawan weapons and everything, and asked me if I'd play his main nemesis. And that's what started the whole movie career. And still, even today, when I look, people would say, oh, do you wish you'd done bigger movies or whatever? Because I did a lot of what we would call low-budget movies. But I honestly go, you won't know. I said, I'm totally content with the journey I've had, with the fun I've had, with the people I've met, because I realized that acting or being a movie star was still not the prime aim for me in my life. It was still, movies was a way to make a bit of money, to be able to afford to spend a bit more time in the dojo, a bit more time training. And that's been my life, and absolutely no regrets.
When you're even off the screen, like, your bodyguard, you work with the Rolling Stones, and like it's Linda Ronstadt and all these things. As you're doing that job, so to speak. What kind of martial arts stuff is in your head? Like, how do you feel like you're using it internally? How would we use it? Like, what in those situations in general? How is it part of your being?
Look, it's a bit like you said. It is just being, because when I started touring, the first thing I would want to do, of course, the prime job is looking after the artist. If you're with David Bowie, who used to be very paranoid and everything, that was a full-time job, security. So that's the number one job. But as far as the being, all I would want to do is get up and do a bit of a workout and do a bit of my training and look after myself. The fun part about that, the throw off was that the band members would sort of see that, and ultimately I'd get a lot of them involved. I used to train Linda and James Taylor, even David. When I met David, one of the reasons he hired me to go and work for him in the States, I was working with him in Australia and New Zealand. He wanted to come along because I'd booked a seminar to teach. And he actually came along and watched the seminar. And he basically said, based on that, he wanted me to tour with him because he saw a bit of that spiritual side of the involvement. It wasn't a bodyguard that's involved in but there was a whole other aspect which he apparently really appreciated. So, and one of the things he did was challenge me to one-arm push-up in a restaurant, which is pretty funny. So I guess the being part is me just being a martial artist. That just permeated everything I did most days. Right. I got to involve them. Even John Belushi, I worked with John. I would train John day after day, try and get him fit and everything. So, but if you think about it, how good is that? Right. That you get to work and be with these people, and you get to spread the joy, as it were, of your individual passion, which is, in this case, happened to be martial arts. And I think that's, when I look back on that, the chance to infect other people with the joy of martial arts, of trying to stay in shape, every aspect that goes with that. I think that kind of really tickled me. And I'd finish that off by saying I met up with James Taylor, who a lot of the young ones might not know, but right. James, what a career. He's still touring. James is a bit older than me. He's probably 76. I'm 74 now. And we sat in a hotel room a few months ago in Sydney, in Australia. For 3 hours, we chatted. He basically said, if I hadn't met you, he said, I'd probably be dead now.
Wow. Because
he had a drug addiction. I'm not giving away secrets because I'd never do that. He said the exercise became his addiction. He hasn't touched anything in 30 plus years. He said, I'd probably still be married to Carly Simon, which is a funny thing to say. But I thought, well, how good is it? And I don't look at that as about me. I look at that as that martial arts actually had an influence on his life, meaning just because I did martial arts, that had the effect on someone like James. I thought, how cool is that,
Yeah. I love that, how you say, you're affecting and you can see this change. When you look back from the beginning, that first time, that spark to now, do you think that maybe is the through line for you? Like as you work through these things, the way you affected others and those sort of things you see, would that be maybe one of the greater things you would describe about your martial arts journey?
Yeah, I think we're using that word infection, which just sort of, but it is. I think I'm infected with every day. It's like, God, what else? What's something new I can learn? That gives me a chance to express my martial arts slightly differently. And it's not to be able to go out and put on a show or do anything like that. Thankfully, and I don't know whether you could say it's on purpose, but I have a saying to people. I say, look, as martial artists, every waking day we have a chance to learn something new. I mean, how good is that, providing you have the desire? Where's somebody else to teach me something a little bit differently or something new? So, because I would often say I don't want to be the same martial artist I was 5 years ago.
I love that.
I want to be able to, how can I express what I do just that little bit differently? You may not notice, but I will notice. And that's what keeps me driving, hence the old saying, always being a student. This idea of being a master. It's like, well, mastery, does that mean you've achieved everything? Where do you go from there? the idea of being a student and keeping bodies in motion, as we call it, always trying to set a new goal. I think that's what it's all about. And thank God, I think I've still got that in my life. And thank goodness I'm surrounded by people like Master Boys and Sensei Benny Okides and Chuck
Yes.
Norris, who are great examples of never stopping to set new goals of learning and achievement, you know. And I think that's a wonderful thing.